All right.
So this is our podcast.
Welcome.
Howdy.
Are we going to introduce ourselves? Is that going to be our,
we have
like,
no idea what we're doing.
I'm so-and-so, alright.
I guess so.
Okay.
Alright, so-and-so, you go ahead.
Okay,
Tell them
I'm
who you
so-and-so, also known as Ethan Vanderbilt.
This voice over here is Sean Weimer.
Taylor Parsons here.
Cool.
Yeah, that's it.
Hey guys, what is beautiful?
Wow, you're very forward with that question.
That's, wow, you know,
It's
you should have
almost
given...
like it's an assignment or something
Should've
that you
given
just
us-
had in mind.
should have given us more time to really think about it. Like, you know, it's not like we were expecting this
Maybe
topic
like a
at
couple
all.
like class days or something.
Yeah, jeez.
I don't know.
Like, it's not like we're writing a multimodal essay or something on it. Like, you know, what's
What?
the deal? Come
This
on.
isn't an essay. This is a podcast.
Oh, yeah, sorry. My bad.
Perfect. Good start.
I'm sorry.
Hey, Sean.
Alright, so...
Okay.
Let's hear it.
So, I hate to be that guy,
Be that guy.
but I had the idea and the mindset that just kind of like everything could be beautiful, in the sense that like the fact that everything just kind of exists at all is a little insane, because I don't know, everything in the universe that has happened, be it due to science or God or both or neither, just has happened in such a way that it made everything. And had one thing been off, then maybe we wouldn't be here. Something about like mitochondria, like going into a cell body to make a cell. I don't know.
Something about it.
It's weird things.
You're reminding me of and it's not 100% like in the same line of thought, but I saw this video which was like, can math prove like God? And it was like he sort of threw some statistic out there where like if a God existed and he like were to make something exactly the way they are, the odds of him doing so were like 1 in like 4 million. But then like he went on to say like if there were multiple gods, like a polytheistic sort of situation, that the chances would be greatly increased because there's more than one. So one of them would have the idea more, I guess, like in a group of people, there's more likely that one will have that idea than in just one person, right? It kind of makes sense that way. And then he was like, actually, it's like a 1 in 4 chance that we're just a simulation made by like future humans, because humans are like always about the like pursuit of like science
Capturing
and whatnot.
reality.
Yeah, capturing reality, sort of. So he was saying like that's actually a really likely situation, is that years in the future we're making simulations to kind of emulate certain things, whether it be like the past or just like a new world, but that would like explain that's sort of like a counter argument to intelligent design. It's like, because it is intelligent design, it's just like people making it.
That's interesting.
It was really weird.
That's really weird.
I'll link the video.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Especially, you know, myself being a monotheist. It's interesting, you know, to say like, oh, if you were to throw statistics at religion to say, you know, like the probability of it, it's really interesting to think about it like that.
It was a weird sort of perspective because I never really thought about it in that way, but it does kind of add up, right?
That there'd be
with the
just...
whole like monotheistic versus polytheistic, where like polytheistic would have more chance for some reason, because there's more gods there to like think about it and have that sort of imagination versus just one.
To have the imagination to create us.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah,
That's weird.
That's kind of the thought that went behind that one.
There's just like 3 gods chilling out.
Yeah.
Well, to imply that, you know, the creativity of a deity / god or whatever would be equal to that of like a regular person, as opposed to, you know, your typical personification of, you know, God being more like an omniscient, like all-knowing kind of person who is, I won't say like infinitely creative, but, you know, I don't know, I feel like it would be it's interesting. It would be hard to like really judge the difference to say, you know, if they're, you know, exactly like just a regular human, they can have, you know, their creativity together to have a higher probability of that, you know, being. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really know where I was going with that. I was just thinking like there would be a difference between saying like, oh, a person versus like God who like, all knowing.
That's a
Awesome.
telephone.
It's a phone.
Indeed.
Darn, so
Within the first, 6 minutes.
That's awesome.
Good on us.
yeah, first podcast, you know, we have a phone call.
Sean, you okay over there?
Goodness gracious.
Figuring out the landline?
Apparently Sean thinks phones are beautiful. He's taking up a lot of the podcast. Looking at that one over there.
It's Sean, focus up.
Goodness
please.
gracious.
Yeah,
I thought we were professionals.
So
Did
you're arguing that everything can be beautiful.
Yeah, I have there's this Business Insider infographic that started talking about the chances of a single person existing.
Going back to chances.
Like the probability.
Right.
Yeah. And it starts off saying like, all right, like here's like the chance of your dad meeting your mom. Like your dad probably met like 20,000 girls in his lifetime. So the chances of like him being with your mom is like 1 in 20,000. And then it keeps going on, and it starts talking about like the chances of them lasting more than 2 years in a relationship, the chances of them getting married, and it kind of like multiplies that together. And then it starts going into like the chances of like that single sperm fertilizing that single egg, and then that's like 1 in like 4 trillion or something, I don't know. And it even goes down and saying like, all right, but it's every single direct descendant that you have, the chances of that single egg being with that single sperm for every single ancestor that you have that leads to you. And then it goes into all of that, and it's 1 in 10 to the 2,685,000 is the chance of you existing, which is a pretty big number.
I would like to argue that that number is smaller for me, because, you know, biologically speaking, you know, you could say, of course, you know, the sperm kind of thing, you know, that is pretty consistent in terms of, you know, possibility. But my dad's kind of a lonely loser like me, so I feel like him meeting, what was it, like 20,000 girls in his life is probably a bit of an overestimate.
It's probably
for
a bit
him.
of an overestimate.
A bit of an
Whether your dad
overestimate.
is
So
a loser or not, he's
probably
still
met like
quite a few.
he's probably met like 4 women in his life and actually and only talked with them. So the probability of me existing is actually a bit higher, which makes me less special, which is okay. But you know,
he's got his mother, probably his grandma, and his wife. That's 3 of them. He probably had at least 1 female
Do you have an
teacher.
No.
Oh,
I don't.
really?
Well, not on my father's side.
Huh.
So yeah. So I.
Do you have an aunt on your mother's side?
I do,
Well,
but
there's 4.
There's 4. Yep. So he's officially met about. I said about. It could be 5 if we're, you know, being generous.
It's a
But
rough estimate.
so yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there that I think I'm less special because my dad is also a lonely loser. But you know.
Well, I think this number is just a little arbitrary in the first place, because it's not even going into the chances of the planet Earth existing and the chances of it orbiting at like the distance that it is from the sun, and the chances of the moon existing because that stabilizes like the Earth's rotation, and then, you know, the whole chances of the universe itself, whatever that is.
Just saying there's
You're going back to the gods thing there. You add that chance in there, and it was like 1 in 4 million
So
or
just
something.
I don't know.
there being an infinite amount of factors that basically play into you being you.
Mm-hmm.
That although kind of like the theory, you know, infinite possibility or infinite probability, that there is over 1 million versions of you if you were to assume there's, you know, multiple dimensions and all that, you know, garbage. If you're just to say that, you know, there's an infinite amount of things that could be even slightly different that can make you a completely different person or basically the same person aside from the color of your eyes to, you know, a certain mannerism or you existing at all. So
It's interesting to think about the fact that that number will go up exponentially as years go by because of like the way technology works, right? Where in, I guess like feudal ages or whatever, you would have met, you know, the 20 other women that live in your village. But now you have like you have access to everyone. You can like
That's true.
you can talk to anyone.
Yeah.
You can randomly type in a name on like Facebook and just chat it up with Talia Miller or whoever. Just, I don't know. Shout out to Talia.
An interesting thing though is that, you know, you're saying, you know, as time progresses and as technology progresses, you can have more and more variations of people. But I think an interesting thing about that is that even if we were to say, you know, for instance, like the movie Gattaca, if either of you have seen it, it's kind of the idea that people are able to pick and choose what they want their child to look like, what traits they want to have, if they're going to have blue eyes or brown eyes or, you know, whatever. The only thing with that is that people, culturally speaking, tend to have a very similar representation of what beautiful is when it comes to a person. And of course that, you know, varies per person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people like short people, some people like tall people, some people like this and that. But I feel like there are certain features that are kind of subconsciously more attractive to other people. And so after a certain period of time of people picking and choosing what they think is beautiful, I feel like you probably end up getting a lot of very similar looking people to a certain point. Just because if you were to pick, you know, the most beautiful, the most handsome person you could, you would get a lot of people that look very similar, because a lot of people, in the grand scheme of things, for very primal reasons, for evolutionary, you know, concepts of, you know, the best meat and all that stuff, you'll probably end up getting a lot of lookalikes in, you know, very, very far future if you were to give people the ability to completely pick and choose what their child looked like.
It's kind of like an argument for difference is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
at that point, would being
uniqueness.
unique be more beautiful because they'd be the one that stand out?
Mm-hmm.
Would that be?
It's iffy though. I'm gonna bring it to Frankenstein with this, right? He's so different that it's not beautiful.
True.
Not Frankenstein, but the monster himself. He's
I know,
big
Victor.
and tall, and he's not, you know, the
Well,
ladies aren't swooning for him.
It even says like he has like luscious black hair and perfectly straight teeth.
Yeah,
Other
he's
features that are considered attractive by other accounts of, you
well,
know,
yeah, because he was made to be, like I think didn't he mention like I think Frankenstein mentioned like the perfect race.
He wanted
sort
to
of
be like
thing.
a perfect specimen.
He wanted to make like a bunch of them as like a new sort of race, and clearly he made something impressive. Like it's super
It's a
agile,
hunk of a
it's
man.
muscular. Like you know, he sped across that glacier.
Yeah.
Like imagining that scene, it was like him bounding like a deer. But yeah, he's so to a degree, difference is beautiful, but the way the human mind works doesn't accommodate that very well sometimes.
True.
Hence racism.
Yeah. I think it's within that point, it's really interesting that Victor designing this monster, like, oh, the perfect person, you know, being able to design this new race, whatever his intentions truly were at the end of the day, he was still appalled by the thing that he made.
Right.
Like, even his own creation, this thing that he made himself, is ugly to him, which I think is really weird, just because, I mean, the amount of time and effort he put into it, and I think pretty early in him making it, it was kind of just talking about how he was a lot more comfortable around it when it was still dead, just because he was okay working with the anatomy, with working with the parts and pieces, but when it became a living thing, it suddenly became this terrifying monster to him, even though it was his own creation.
I think that's sort of like, I don't know, this is a weird comparison, but like, if you like look at a rock, okay, you'd be like, it's a good rock. But like, if that rock started like moving around, you'd be like, whoa, whoa.
Calm down.
Hey.
But I wasn't going out to make a living rock. You
No.
know, like Victor was making a living person.
No, yeah, but like things that sort of, I don't know, defy the norm are like, okay, they're good, but I don't know. It's a weird fine line that we walk with it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
The
beautiful.
Uncanny Valley. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I did a presentation on the Uncanny Valley.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the Uncanny Valley.
So the Uncanny Valley is like, you know, creepy things. Like, you know the word creepy, sort of. That's what my
Okay.
presentation was about. It was about things that are creepy. And you have this line of, like things that are humanoid, but not quite human. And the way it works is it kind of slopes upwards and then makes a big dip. And that's where the Uncanny Valley is, and then it goes back up. And it goes in kind of like the creep factor, right?
Okay.
Where like the slope goes up for things that are like, this is unnerving, goes up, less unnerving, less unnerving, and then for some reason there's a big dip the closer you get to like humanoid things.
Is that why people find those really like lifelike robots that you'll see like in Japan and stuff that are like almost human, but they have like the slight differences that are like it's really unnerving?
Mannequins fall into that category. Things like I think there's a Vsauce video about this.
Yeah.
And the like screen cap I think he uses, or like the thumbnail image, is like a teddy bear that has human teeth.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In it, which is another sort of, it's not quite there because it's not a humanoid thing, but it has aspects of it that are off to people.
Yeah.
And a lot of what that revolves around is ambiguity. So the reason that thing exists is because it's the same reason that masks are kind of creepy, is because you can see that there's a face, but you can't see emotion in it. You can't you can't tell what a mannequin is thinking, because a mannequin's not thinking anything. But the fact that you recognize it as a humanoid thing and it's just not sentient doesn't make sense, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. The only thing I'm having a hard time with that is thinking of that from the perspective of like animation, or thinking about it from like video games, for instance. Like, it's very clearly a thing, like, let's say like a character from a video game that you're playing as, and it can look human, it can be designed to look human, but it's obviously not. Why do we not find those things more creepy? Because they're clearly synthetic, they're not real, they're not actually human, and yet they're designed to look human, and so they're very human-like, but they're not human. So why do we not see that as being a lot creepier, a lot stranger? Is it because our brain can separate that from being a video game versus seeing like a mannequin where it's like it's a physical object in front of you, or is it like...
I wonder if it's a threat thing.
Yeah, there's that plays a part in it. Like if you see a dude in a mask on an image, you're like, okay. But if you see a dude in a mask on the other side of the alley from you, it's gonna be a lot creepier. But as far as like cartoons go, I believe there is a difference as far as like, for one, you can see those cartoons making emotions. That's what animation revolves around, is making exaggerated features. So exaggerated eyes are, bigger, and therefore they can like display a wider variety of emotions than what you could, I think, detect from something like a mannequin being animated. Which is why when you see things like those realistic robots, it's not as it's weird. It's weird.
I gotcha. Because it's basically the idea of taking a mannequin and having it move and speak, as opposed to something that's animated to show true emotion, or at least not true emotion, but to simulate emotion in a way that's a little more understandable.
In essence, cartoons don't really look that human. Where, like, I'm gonna draw from Phineas and Ferb here. He's got a big triangle head, and his nose is like part of his chin. I don't even understand what's going on with Phineas, but like you can tell that he's not human. And when it gets closer, that's what that initial like sort of
curve.
Curve upwards is where like cartoons fall in there, where they're humanoid, but I think they're like right on the cusp of the uncanny valley, where they're humanoid, but you can tell that they're fine. But then when you drop in there, that's when you get to things that are really close to human.
Oddly realistic. There's like those images of like SpongeBob characters in real life where Patrick is like some really gross pink.
Yeah, because it has humanoid features, but you can tell it's not human.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
It weirds you out. It's creepy.
Yeah, I gotcha. Well, I really like, Sean, your idea of what is beautiful, largely because it is close to saying like, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but it's not saying that anything can be beautiful, it's not saying everything is beautiful. And I think there's a really cool difference, although somewhat subtle in there, that saying that it's not saying, just any one thing on its own, according to one person's perspective, can be beautiful, which obviously is true. But just saying that everything in its existence, everything, together as one thing, the whole planet, all of existence, all of, working together as one thing is really awesome, because it's just saying that everything is beautiful. So I think that's really cool.
That's what I was going for.
I have to sort of play the devil's advocate with that and say, hey, what about like serial killers and such?
I think it's beautiful in the sense that everything that is here, that tree, that clock, is capable of existing in whatever form of existence we are in. And I think that the fact that serial killers, while not necessarily beautiful, and beautiful is a very broad term.
Right.
So serial killers, while not necessarily beautiful in their actions toward humanity, but the fact that humanity and such varying differences of people's opinions and thought and actions exist is kind of beautiful, even though we're all kind of one species.
So yours and mine go hand in hand with everything is beautiful because everything is different. And different is beautiful.
And I think within Sean's point, you can't have good, you can't have beautiful without having ugly and bad. You can't have one thing without having the other. And so I think the emphasis on having everything be beautiful is only emphasized by having things that are like your serial killers, or the things that are, you know, morally evil, or things like that, that, you know, give a contrast to, you know, make everything in its entirety beautiful. You could say the human race is beautiful because they're unique, and, you know, they all have their own passions, they all have their own this and that. But you still have the serial killers. You still have the, you know, people who make really questionable moral decisions, the Hitlers, the Stalins, the people who did really evil things. And yet, after all of those evil things, you still have an entirety of a race of beautiful people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the ability to move on and keep growing.
In a way.
Sort of.
Yeah, sure. I like that.
That's what I got from that.
So what I think is beautiful is a little more specific. I think art specifically is beautiful, which I know is not exactly the most creative thing per se, but it's largely from the perspective of an artist, you know, myself, who likes drawing and whatnot. I like the idea that something that you can create yourself, kind of like, you know, Victor making Frankenstein, something you make, you can see is ugly. You can see the flaws in it, you can see what's wrong with it, you can see something that's like, wow, this really sucks. You can draw a picture that you spent hours and hours on, and like at the end of it, you're like, I don't like this. And yet you can talk to a friend, you can talk to a stranger, and they think it's awesome. You're like, wow, I wish I could do that. Wow, that's so cool. And so that's why, like, I'll sometimes be drawing in class, and like, yeah, this is a stupid doodle, and someone's like, oh, that's really cool. I'm like, not really. It's not very good. And so I think it's kind of a cool thing to see with Frankenstein specifically, and how he, you know, he made this, what he, you know, describes as being, you know, this horrific, you know, ugly creature, this thing. Yeah, there may be someone else that could perceive it as being beautiful, as, you know, someone that, you know, that could see it as not being, you know, horrifically ugly and horrible. And so yeah, I just thought specifically the perspective of kind of the opposite of beauty in the eye of the beholder, of saying, you know, oh, I think this is beautiful, and maybe nobody else does. It's a sense that I think this is really ugly and stupid, and maybe not everyone else, but someone else can say, oh yeah, it's actually, you know, it's really cool. It's like this, really, you have a lot of talent, or, you know,
Right.
This is something I can really appreciate.
Mm-hmm. One man's trash is another man's treasure.
In a way, yeah.
What I enjoy about art, and what I think is really kind of cool, is the fact that it doesn't really do or help anything, but yet we have these giant pictures of just like paint and colors that people splashed around, and it evokes like some weird emotion in us that we just connect with it and find it beautiful, that someone spent time and could creatively express an emotion or a thought. And even though it's not directly aiding us as a people, it's still something that we find interesting. Like music doesn't really do a whole lot relatively, but it still is something that has created culture. It's something that's bounded us together. It's something that spreads stories down for generations and stuff. So I think it's very interesting.
I would argue that it does. It is a very purposeful sort of thing for those same reasons, that it does create culture, that it does, you know, it does move people in such a way that they do things or inspires them or whatever. So it sort of it sort of makes the collective. What am I trying to say? it sort of brings things together in a way that can't be really done by anything else.
Right.
If you kind of get that, yeah.
I think so.
I think that, you know, in itself also brings up that stupid question of what is art.
Yeah.
Kind of like oh, nothing is art, everything is art, some things are art. Like, it's totally, in my personal opinion, totally not an important question. It's kind of like, who cares? Like, I mean, I guess my opinion on this more what you think is art, you know. But I mean, anyone can make art in any way they can, and I know it's like such a unique thing, but it can have such a huge impact. For like one of my things like that's pretty high on my bucket list is going to the Louvre, which is the huge art museum in France. And if you boil down really what it is, it's just a big building full of paint and full of canvas and full of pictures on a wall. Like in its literal composition of what it is, it's not really anything. It's kind of just materials that don't really have any meaning. And yeah, you can look at a painting on a wall and say, wow, that was made by someone a master who's very talented in art. Looking at something painted by Da Vinci, or looking at these things that have so much meaning culturally speaking, and have such a profound emotional impact, and yet at its core is kind of just nothing, something that just was made by someone. So I just thought that's cool, and that's kind of what makes it.
No, it's very cool. I think it's a very, very interesting thing. Is art, whatever it is. Not that it matters.
Yeah. If I'm allowed, I'm gonna tie that into mine.
You're not allowed.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So we're gonna finish the podcast now. Sean and I got to talk about what we thought, but Taylor doesn't really get to.
I briefly mentioned it.
Briefly.
I had like a 5-minute thought.
I suppose you could talk.
But it's sort of, it's kind of the same thing where, these people, these like artists, you don't just throw anything up in the Louvre. It's these people who were so. They were such deviants from what was, I guess, socially normal. Like normally you go out and you get a job at like a mill or something. I don't know, whatever. It's almost made it in my head. You go out and you do something that would be considered useful, but and even now, like this world sort of runs on media, but things like being an art student or being like a drama student or something, people look at them and say, hey, you're just asking to be a bartender for the rest of your life, sort of, and maybe they are, but it's
some people enjoy bartending.
Yeah, I mean,
it's an art.
Yeah, I don't judge.
A lot of tips, man. Like
2017, I don't judge. But it's sort of, people have to take those risks, otherwise nothing would happen, right? Where the greats like I don't know, Will Ferrell is up there as like he's one of the most commonly known sort of comedian actors out there, but at one point he was just a guy who was kind of set out, and I'm sure people were saying, oh, you're asking to be a bartender for the rest of your life. But he, you move on from it, and you sort of, if you don't take the risk and be different, then things won't work, right? So the world sort of revolves around deviance from the norm.
So you're saying that deviance and that work toward that deviance and what the outcome is beautiful.
Sort of, yeah. Sort of. I was sort of referencing how artists and whatnot are usually frowned upon for what they do.
Yeah. Take Picasso.
That's kind of like every single era was started by every single era of art was started by some guy who just did something else, and people were like, oh, what is that? But then it caught on and it changed everything. It made an era.
Mm-hmm.
So the things don't progress without people taking risks, and to take risks you have to be different. And so it sort of, I think, is beautiful in that way, where the world is essentially just a big deviance and a set of them to kind of keep it going.
I like how you brought up specifically like with comedy, with people like Will Ferrell, these big names in the industry really in general that kind of like were able to step out as being unique and became really popular and became really well known because of that and really successful. This last year I read the book Yes Please by Amy Poehler, who's a really funny comedian. She is the main actress from the show Parks and Rec, which I know is pretty popular. But anyway, in her book she talked a lot about starting in stand-up and how a lot of successful comedians have started in stand-up just by kind of putting themselves out there, and how there are a lot of people who don't see success just because they're afraid of putting themselves out in front of a crowd. They're afraid of trying to do what they love, and they're afraid of
The backlash.
being exactly, kind of putting themselves out there and being afraid of the response they'll get from people who don't think they're funny, who don't like what they say, who don't like them as a person, whatever it is. And it was just specifically within the book, I remember her talking about specifically it taking a long time for her putting herself out there and stand up and trying to be funny and try to be the person that people actually think is funny, and a person that could be successful in this industry. Of there are a lot of people who are trying to be the next Will Ferrell, the next whoever. Some people see huge success like Amy Poehler, like Will Ferrell, like those big names, and there's a lot of people who don't see success at all.
Right, but I mean, the thing about people not seeing success is it's going to happen because it's such a big thing, right? Like you can't have everyone who goes out to be, the next Will Ferrell or whatever isn't going to be the next Will Ferrell. But there has to be someone, right?
Right.
People move out, others move in. It's kind of a cycle. And before, I mean, it's the way it works is like, at one point Will Ferrell was like watching TV or whatever, and it was like the big name then, like I don't know, Chris Farley or something. I don't know how old Will Ferrell is, but it was someone else who was the big name, and who, if he were talking about this, would talk in the same way. We're like, oh, there's Chris Farley up there. He's the big name. No one's ever going to replace him. Well, someone has to replace him, because that's how it works. Because in 100 years, we're going to have a whole new set of people who are changing other people's lives in this way, through media, culture, like music and movies and things like that. So it's people who take those risks that are sort of
and I like part of having the next Will Ferrell concept. If someone Will Ferrell saw someone else before him, whoever it was, that was like the comedy giant at the time. He was seeing it through a TV screen, but now we're seeing comedians through like a computer screen. The medium itself, I mean, from the sake of comedy, has transferred, and media in general has gone to a lot of computers, social media. Tons of comedians on YouTube that didn't exist a decade ago would have been, stand-up, nightclubs and stuff like that. They're a completely different forum for, these people to flourish in their own pursuit of revolutionizing comedy or revolutionizing whatever they want to do, becoming the next them.
Like you remind me of Key and Peele.
Yeah, exactly.
Saying that, where their sketches are not movie or TV show worthy because they're like 3 minutes long tops, but they're not comedy bits either. So the media sort of opens up a new outlet for people.
Interesting.
But despite like these 3-minute videos and stuff like that, they're wildly successful. I think Jordan Peele just came out with a movie recently that
it was
Get
is
Out.
It still it was Get Out. Does it still have like 98%?
I have no idea. I don't know
wildly
about
successful movie.
Yeah, seriously.
And as comedians, they're wildly successful, and so they have made incredible strides in the industry. And it was, as far as I know, mostly through YouTube, which is something that is completely new. And as far as I know, through the beginning of Will Ferrell's career, was totally not a thing.
Yeah, no. The way that you get to a certain point is different, but the I guess the end result is the same.
But what about the difference that is bad? Like the savage in Brave New World, he was a very different thing, a very different personality brought into a very new world, a brave new world. And he was so different that people didn't enjoy it and then looked down upon it as something that isn't to be respected because it's not worthy or something. What makes that difference?
So I'm going to take a really extreme example. It's not Brave New World. I'm going to take a really extreme example, so hear me out. The example I'm going to take is Hitler, okay? Hitler...
What an example.
Hitler thought differently, okay? He thought, I'm going to become, the dictator, and I'm going to blame it on certain groups of people, and we're going to commit mass genocide. Yeah, that's way bad. But from a different standpoint, right? He changed the world in that he sort of, I don't know, I wouldn't say like defined a new sort of like evil, but he sort of, it's like that history will repeat itself unless we learn from it, right? So even then, in those instances of like pure evil, there's if nothing else something we can learn from it, where we can improve ourselves upon it based on what's happened in the past. So while that's not altogether beautiful in the moment, it does. I guess I was talking about cycles with like Will Ferrell and whatnot. It's also a cycle in this way where people learn from it and they move forward with the world keeps turning, and we learn to move on from it.
And we have these different branches of things that are different because of these cycles and the way things are moving.
Yeah.
And I think the internet is bringing out a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah, the internet's a very big outlet for that.
The internet is beautiful.
So at the end of that little thing, I think the most important thing to note was that Hitler's beautiful.
Yes,
in his own way.
Quote me on it.
Hitler is beautiful.
Well, the chances of Hitler existing is 1 in 10.
No, he's unique and special in his own way.
Oh yeah.
You
That cute little mustache.
I know.
Isn't there a poem of like, oh, look at little baby Hitler. He's going to be a fine man one day.
We'll attach an image of Hitler.
That's great.
That'll just be like the single background for the entire video. It doesn't change, it's just Hitler.
I love how this little podcast we've done about, talking about what we think is beautiful has somehow boiled down to Hitler. Like, I love how we managed to do that. That's, great.
Isn't that a thing? I swear I've heard something where no matter how long you talk about something, you'd always go to Hitler.
Well, there's that Wikipedia game, right? You go to a random article on Wikipedia and you have to get to Hitler in 10 clicks?
7 clicks.
7 clicks or less.
I feel like we could do that. I feel like we could do it in 4 clicks.
I got a really easy one time. I got the 1942 Berlin Olympics. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, Berlin, Hitler.
Well, there is a hard mode where you can't do countries or years.
Right.
So you have to go through.
Yeah, it's
specific Olympic events or something.
But that you're screwed if you start out with sheetgrass.
Yeah. But that's half the fun. Is going through sheetgrass.
There could be.
But you can't click on Germany.
No.
One time I was told to go from India to roller coasters. Someone gave me the suggestion, and I went from India, and I just started clicking things, or from roller coasters to India, I think. No, it was the other way around. India to roller coasters. Sorry. And I just didn't know what to do at one point. I got so lost, so I just started clicking on random names, and one of them ended up being some engineer that referenced to some form of physics. And then of course roller coasters are very good examples of physics. So I just went through this physics to roller coaster examples and got to roller coasters.
That's really something.
Beautiful.
From roller coasters to physics and
Hitler and such.
Beauty.
What a beautiful conversation, guys.
Yeah, so do we have any last comments we wanted to throw in there about the discussion?
Well, I think beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
All right.
Thank you, Sean.
That moment is where we got the F on this assignment.
Well,
So thanks for that.
We can edit it out in post.
Mr. Roberts gonna start punching us and giving us failing grades, so that's great. Thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Because we all know Miss Roberts is a heavily violent.
Yes, clearly she's very
punch
violent.
us and give us bad grades.
Yeah, I have so many
Should we just
painful memories there.
devolve into some completely opposite tangent now? So if like Miss Roberts wants to listen, she can. She's taking her run one day.
Yeah.
I feel like she's the kind of person who would think it's kind of funny and like listening and just randomly have the time to do it, and then after a certain point she's gonna be really confused when we just start going on this completely different tangent. And she's like, I may regret this decision.
Yeah, I figured we'd go a bit longer, so we do have time to spare.
Okay, well, I didn't know if we wanted to end it. Kind of we went through our main points of what the three of us think is beautiful.
Yeah. So we can note those down.
I'm just gonna write down like where we generally ended.
Okay.
I'll attach
don't
an
go
image of
beyond this
Hitler.
point.
Oh yeah, I have.
Don't stop right when you hear Hitler. It's probably about time to sign off.
When you hear Hitler, it's time to go.
If you've hit Hitler, you've gone too far.
I feel like historically speaking, that's also the case. But you know, we're not gonna go there. We're gonna avoid that discussion per se. I don't know if we need any more Hitler in this discussion, but you know,
What is the opposite of Hitler?
More Hitler.
Jesus.
Gandhi.
Gandhi.
I was gonna say Jesus is the first one that came to mind, but I feel like that really puts Hitler in really quite the light, doesn't it? To compare him as the contrast to Jesus Christ. Like, wow, I feel like Gandhi's probably a better contrast to Hitler.
That means Hitler would be the Antichrist.
Yeah, that's literally what you just said.
I'm making some bold statements.
As bad as he is, I feel
Hitler
like
is beautiful, but also the Antichrist.
That being said, I don't feel like we're the first people to call Hitler the Antichrist. So I mean, I guess that's good.
So is Jesus was the second coming of Christ like just some indiscriminate like World War II general?
I mean, maybe.
Battling the Antichrist.
General Jesus, you know.
You think when the second coming comes, he's just gonna like and like pop into like a random body?
Another virgin birth. So
another virgin birth.
I mean, that'll be a little strange.
Like a randomize on the population. Okay, here we go.
What would the chances of that happen? Because he wouldn't have the whole sperm and egg thing.
You know, it'd just end up being Maury. That's all it would be. He'd just go on Maury. Because like the virgin would, whoever she may be, would be like, I swear I didn't do it. And her mom would.
Oh
be
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Young lady.
Oh,
would the chances be 1?
Her like sketchy boyfriend would.
Are you saying Jesus could be 1 in what 10 to the 2,600,000?
No, because he doesn't have the whole back generation thing. The whole people to.
I gotcha. So he would.
The chances would be 1 because there would be a god.
That would make him really common.
Well, if you want to get technical,
to say 1.
Well, he had to happen
because we are here.
Did. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's hard to.
That's when you get into the whole theoretics of it.
Oh, it's very interesting because it's like so many things could have happened, but this is the only thing that did, and so it's the only thing that can happen because it is.
You could translate this to like one of those like baby predictors, right? Where like you know where you like put your face in and then put your spouse's face.
Oh
in.
yeah.
And they like calculate quote unquote what your baby would be.
You got a guy on the other end with Photoshop.
Yeah,
he has the top half of one face and puts it on top of the other face. It looks like it could be a human, I guess. I don't know. Like...
Mitchell, your beard really shows through.
Wow, that's strange. So, very feminine features. Yet also the beard is a little throw me off a bit.
It could be translated to that, right? Where like this is what your baby would look like, but it's a 1 in 256 like billion chance that this is what it is.
What if it's literally just like on those programs, it's the same baby picture you get, it's just like different colored eyes depending on like, it's like, oh, they both have blue eyes, okay, the baby gets blue eyes, but it's literally the same baby that everyone else sees.
Running a Punnett square in the back room. Blue eyes.
Blue and brown, there's a recessive gene. Yeah, I feel like it's probably some Russian dude.
Some Russian dude running Punnett
they have the
squares.
blue eyes.
It's like the guy in vending machines.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
The guy in the garage door who has to like crank it when
Yeah.
someone has the door. Guess they're home, start cranking the door open.
All these people in all these crevices.
That's a fun sentence.
I feel like can we title it that? Can we title it all these people in all these crevices?
Let's not forget this This started as a school assignment.
That is true.
Progressed in these last 4 minutes.
And within the confines of a school assignment podcast, we've discussed beauty, Hitler,
The Antichrist.
all these people in all these crevices.
The chances of us being just a simulation. That was.
Yeah, there's a bit in there about that.
Well, there is an interesting. I think.
Like Lacan stuff there.
I mean, yeah. Do we need to pull out, works of Lacan right now and start referencing his stuff?
I don't know who is Lacan.
Did you not read about Jacques Lacan last year in English?
I did not.
No, he's got this whole paradoxical everything is a simulation sort of thing. Where it was
simulation and simulacrum.
It was basically.
Have you seen the Matrix movies?
Yeah.
It's those movies were directly based off of his work.
Oh.
It's
at
kind
least
of
the
like
first movie. The second movie, for most of it, I specifically watched the movies, by the way, and compared it just because I was so bored that I was like, that sounds kind of fun. I'll take. Literally, I got from the library a copy of Simulation Simulacrum by Lacan, and I was like, I've got all 3 Matrix movies. I'm just gonna, marathon with this. And the first movie, it was really fun with the first movie because it was very direct, metaphorical representations, very symbolic, but it's also not super creative. For instance, the very beginning of the first Matrix movie, the protagonist is a guy who's dealing in illegal software. He literally goes over to a bookshelf and grabs a copy of Simulation and Simulacrum off the shelf and opens it, and of course inside is a hollowed out, and it has this, well, at the time it was a floppy disk. This illegal software. And then, the plot of the movie continues, but there's all sorts of things like him touching a mirror and it ripples and it's a false version of him, all sorts of cool stuff. But so I would definitely recommend reading up a little bit about it and rewatching the first movie. And like I said, the second movie kind of follows it, and then the third movie is kind of the director's we really don't know what to do anymore, so we're just gonna make another weird movie.
You would enjoy Lacan, I think.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah,
really interesting.
I'd be curious about that.
If you can decipher some heavy philosopher type writing, then it's for you.
I think with the discussion that we've been having.
Oh yeah. He brings up Hitler multiple times.
Really?
And the Antichrist.
Oh yeah.
And, all these people in all these crevices.
On his desk, he's actually known for having a portrait of both Hitler and the Antichrist. Of course, the Antichrist. He changes the person every month because he doesn't really know.
It's just Hitler in a mirror.
Yeah, basically. No one said Lacan was sane, but
he probably wasn't. Who did
probably not.
Who did that one jailhouse design? We read about that as well.
The Panopticon.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let me look that up real quick because I don't know.
It wasn't Lacan, I know that.
No,
but
the concept that
it was the same unit though that we read about both of them.
Yeah, the concept that the feeling of always being watched, even if you aren't actually being watched, makes you regulate your own behavior. Is that basically what it was?
Yeah, it's basically designed for a jail.
That's some 1984 style stuff.
It's basically designed for a jail where there's it's a big circle, okay, and I think it was 2-tiered most of the time.
For the sake of space.
I think I've heard of this.
Yeah. But there's one central sort of spire, and
mirrors or something.
Yeah, they used sort of they didn't explicitly hold these people in
cool.
Ethan showing Sean a picture.
Yeah,
sorry.
We have to describe what's happening.
It's basically a picture that is just kind of it looks kind of like an arena, kind of where it's circular with the jails lining the outside, and in the very center is this tower where, in the context of a prison, you would have
the watchman,
the warden, whoever's watching, make sure that the prisoners are all in order and stuff. The Panopticon is a type of institutional building designed by the English philosopher and social theorist Jeremy Bentham in the late 18th century, according to Wikipedia. So
right. No, it is Bentham. I remember.
It's Bentham, yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of it was a weird concept where they didn't ever know if they were being watched or not, so they didn't ever
assume that they
do anything.
Were.
So yeah.
That's interesting.
You had to assume you're being watched unless proven otherwise. So
yeah, promoting paranoia is good.
Fear is a great controller.
Part of me feels like you might go insane.
Yeah.
Sort of being in that freedom is
Have you guys
a couple footsteps away because you're not confined. That's the point.
Mm-hmm.
Is you're not explicitly confined, but you can't tell if you're being watched or not.
It makes It makes me think of like a watered down version of that. Is kind of like, I don't know about you guys, but my parents at some point within my childhood kind of gave a small speech about like, you know, behaving and acting as a person as if you were being watched, in the concept of like,
It's like integrity.
Yeah.
This sort of integrity speech.
yeah, you wouldn't be a jerk to some random person if your mom was right next to you, kind of thing. It's kind of like the idea of, again, watered down concept of if you're always being watched, you have to assume you are. Just behave as if you are trying to be your best around other people, which is a positive spin on it and not being controlled by fear. But
right. They say that people reveal who they truly are only when they're alone, and that's like their true persona is what they are doing when nobody is watching. And so I think in the panopticon or whatever it's called, you can't be yourself truly because you're not ever like truly alone, because you're just kind of always thinking that someone's watching.
That's sort of like the whole if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it still make a noise argument?
Does the tree have integrity? Does it?
Does the tree have integrity? It's a good question.
Is the tree a simulation?
Maybe not physical integrity because it fell in the forest.
But yeah, no, it's the same line of thinking, I think. Comparable.
I really don't remember how we got there.
I don't know why.
I think we were talking about
I mentioned Lacan.
Well,
I don't know why I mentioned Lacan.
I was gonna mention Fate.
Fate.
And then we started going on Lacan because I didn't know who that was.
Oh, right. You asked who Lacan was.
Right.
And I had to explain.
Well, I was gonna say, because we were talking about something didn't matter, and I was gonna say, well, like, it doesn't matter if there's a fate or not, because I'm still going to do whatever I'm going to do. I'm still gonna throw this pen across the room, regardless.
You did, in fact, throw the pen.
There was a pen being thrown by Sean.
Regardless if in the Book of Life it says Sean will throw the pen across the room, or if it was free will, it doesn't matter. I'm still gonna do it.
The thing is, it's a very dodgy conversation talking about like what will happen and what will not, because when you try to psych it out,
then it's like that doesn't really prove anything.
You have to know, like, if you course correct, unless you explicitly know what it is that's going to happen, which you can't like defy fate, I guess.
Well, yeah, like spontaneity doesn't necessarily mean you're defying fate.
No.
Because you can just be spontaneously doing something random just for the sake of being random, like throwing a pen across the room. Like,
right, yeah.
Well, yeah, and if I go and try to pick up the pen and something stops me, is that fate trying to stop me from...
If I get out of my chair and tackle Sean on his way to getting the pen, then maybe that was fate, or maybe I just decided to tackle Sean because I'm secretly harboring a disdain for Sean.
It also comes down to whether or not you believe in fate.
But it doesn't matter. To me, at least.
What's interesting about that, the general belief in fate, is that it varies so much per person. Some people completely believe in fate, some people completely don't, some people believe in it when it's convenient, some people believe in it when it isn't convenient. For instance, I mean, for myself, like, I totally believe in soulmates, which is in a way kind of a form of fate, is believing you're destined to you're destined to be with a certain individual, and I think it's just like that idea that there are totally people who believe in soulmates, but also believe that nothing else in their life is determined by fate. Humans by nature, I feel like, are pretty picky, choosy, kind of like in terms of their beliefs and their faiths, and a lot of why there's so commonly arguments and contradictions when it comes to religion, when it comes to beliefs and stuff like that. So I just think it was interesting that kind of Sean was just saying, it doesn't matter if there's fate or not. True, from the perspective of it's going to happen, whether it's supposed to or not. Also because people are going to believe whatever the heck they want, and it doesn't really matter if there's fate or not if people believe completely different things. Like, which is good that people believe different things, but regardless of fate as a general concept or not, whether it exists or not, humans can believe something completely different. They can believe that there's no such thing as fate and nothing in life is dictated by it, and yet everything they do is dictated by fate, or vice versa, someone who believes everything is meant to be this specific way that it is because of fate, and life is kind of just like jumbly nonsense that kind of does whatever it wants whenever. So
part of me has like, I don't believe in it necessarily, because it's always been like a just a weird thought that I've had, because you know how I get those. But
what, you having weird thoughts?
But
Hitler
it was
is beautiful. No.
Hitler's beautiful. Quote me on it.
I will. Believe me, I
but
will.
It was it's sort of like I have my own consciousness, right? And I don't have anyone else's. So in a very raw form, to me, there's no proof that you actually have a consciousness, right?
Yeah.
So in the same abstract, really abstract line of thinking, what if there was a set course for me, because I am me, that defines sort of a very wide array of experiences that we'd feel. So I'm going to experience in my life because I need to experience everything that there is to experience in my life, because I have my own consciousness. I need to experience, I will lose someone very close to me. I will, I'll kill someone, I guess, accidentally or on purpose, whatever. But it's an experience, and it will happen because everything needs to happen to me, sort of. So that it's kind of like a spiritual journey, if you want to say. But it's all set out by fate, if you want to call it. But it's sort of like a yeah, and it reminds me of like a short story I read, which was it was sort of a weird take on religion, where it was taken, I don't know, I think it was from God's perspective actually, but it was like you appeared before me, or whatever, and so it's like this guy who died, and then he's talking to God, and God's basically saying, hi, you've died now. And he goes, oh dear, is my wife and kids here or whatever? And he goes, yes, but also no, because the way that this person had set up religion is that this man was everyone.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking
So
about that story. I was gonna bring it up.
So he basically, have you read this, Ethan?
I have not, no.
So he basically says that God has created, or God, which is another sort of, basically it's saying that God was this guy at one point, and then when he experienced everything, he sort of moved up, not in rank, but he sort of it's not a tiered system, but he sort of he gained the knowledge
scheme.
necessary to move on with his sort of existence. And
it's a self-actualization.
Yeah, sort of, but he had to experience everyone. So that God made this earth, and he made this one soul. So soul, I guess. Sort of.
Yeah.
I don't know how to define that. And to help that soul move through and become something better and something greater, he was going to experience everyone. He was going to be every murderer. He was going to be every Gandhi. He was going to be every comedian. He was going to be everyone. And so it ended with if you stay up here too much longer, you're going to start remembering everything, and you can't do that quite yet because you haven't experienced everything yet. So you're going back down as a girl in India in 1942 or something.
So gain the fullness of the human experience.
Yeah.
I see.
Self-actualization in its sort of most heightened sense.
So remind me how that applies to your own philosophy.
It's sort of, it's not the same what I've thought about, but it is the same in that it's that since it is my life and I have my own consciousness, I will whatever put me here, right, is going to put me through everything.
Okay.
So I'll experience the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, because that's what I need to
to mature as
fully
a person.
to become
I gotcha. Interesting.
to kind of
my personal life philosophy is expressed a lot more religiously based.
Right.
In the sense of the God's plan sort of idea of, although I do have free will, of course, biblically speaking and, personally speaking, I have free will, to live my life how I want, but at the same time, there is a plan kind of set in place for me, that is, God has put there, and so it's oftentimes a form of, like, re-encouragement, just a sense of, wow, things really, really suck right now, and knowing that life is supposed to be this way because it is supposed to be this way, because that's part of the plan. I don't know what that plan is. I know what my dad always told me is kind of a mentality / philosophy that he kind of, gave to me, of, God's plan, which is common. But he said it helps to think about looking at, like, a rectangular block or, like, a brick or whatever. Something where it's your life. It's a metaphor representation of your life. You only see the short end, like the long end of it, and you only see a little bit. And basically, as your life goes on, you go a little piece at a time. You only see what's going on right there, and you know what's behind you. God can look at the entire width of the brick and see the entire life from beginning to end, and know this happens this time, this happens that time. He's able to have a different perspective on your life. Of course, being omniscient, kind of. Got it. Yeah. And so just being able to look at life in a way where you're gonna see really crappy times, you're gonna see the highest to highs, lowest to lows, and they're supposed to happen just because they're supposed to happen, which is similar in a sense to what you were saying. Almost for a similar reason, in that for me to grow as a person, for me to be, to reach my full potential, however that works out, it aligns with God's plan in the end. Hence why my belief in soulmates, my belief in this and that. So it's kind of.
I'm not a religious person, so it's a different sort of.
It's interesting
thing, but it all adds up to the same thing. And I don't actually believe a word of what I just said. It's always been a thought that, like, it not always been a thought, but it's like been a thought that I've had a couple times, and I like to think through, like, the logistics of something like that being real, just because it's fun. So
it's fun to hypothesize and kind of create these hypothetical situations of what is the best perspective to have on life, and what can help you be a better person today, just as much as the person you can be in the next lifetime, or whatever it could be, or however that plan works out. It's really interesting to think hypothetically how that could be to better yourself. So yeah,
life is strange.
Indeedy.
Good input.
All right, well, we've reached an hour.
We have reached an hour.
Despite 11:40.
Despite Sean's desire to not go for an hour.
Well, you know what? I think the tangent thing works, because we said what we wanted to say.
We did, yeah.
And we tangented, and then we just went AWOL at the end.
There's like a solid 40-minute period of time where we talked about randomness.
Yeah. It's 11:40 in the morning, and I am. Nah.
Yeah.
I was up till 5 last night, and I woke up at.
I'm wearing sweats.
8:30.
I
got 3.5 hours of sleep. I'm gonna go help my grandmother move houses.
Ethan's got to work. I'll edit this. I'll make maybe like some images to link in the description. Yeah. But she's not gonna hear this part, maybe. So.
Well.
Put a few sexy photos of Hitler in there.
So no.
Ooh, well, maybe just maybe
normal
tasteful
ones.
Maybe tasteful ones.
Tasteful.
Where he'll be mostly clothed. Mostly clothed.
Mostly.
They'll be provocative.
Provocative
but they won't be explicitly, revealing. So,
provocative Hitler.
I think this is the conclusion.
Good talk.
Of our podcast. Yeah, it's good talk.
The first official podcast.
The first official podcast.
I feel like this shouldn't be the first official.
We should probably have
put it up as like a test run.
The pre-run.
Wow, these people are
only
really
true
insane.
fans will hear this one.
Yeah, only the true fans.
The one after we've hit our 100 episode marker. Oh, this is our first one we did.
Privatize it, and then when we get wildly popular, because
it's only for the patrons.
We're that kind of folk.
Only for the patrons.
If you want, guess what? Secret episode.
If you want to be a podcast first member, we'll be $9.99 a month, and
We'll
you get
embed-
exclusive access to certain videos and live podcasts.
We'll embed one letter of the URL in every description of our podcast until we reach the end.
Out of order.
Maybe not.
You'll come in. But anyways, that is the end of our podcast. Thank you, Miss Roberts.
If
And-
you
Tolerating, not necessarily listening.
that's probably a better phrasing. Thank you, Miss
Probably,
Roberts, for listening to however much you listen to, whether that be an entirety of 2 minutes that encompassed all of our opinions that we're putting in the description and probably giving it to you on a piece of paper. Or if you're truly insane, listening / tolerating the entirety.
maybe
of
it's just
the
over the
podcast.
summer and she's just incredibly bored.
Over
I
the
mean,
summer, she's gonna become an avid fan.
Just running one day, I'll listen to the full
Let's
podcast.
listen to the
and
whole thing.
At the end of the podcast,
So
the end of
not
the
worth
run,
it.
she's regretting this decision heartily. So
All 1 hour and 5 minutes and 37 seconds.
it's pretty horrifying.
Hope
1
your
hour and
run
5
went
seconds,
well.
37 seconds. Good, and you keep running. You're doing great.
Does she
Keep
listen
on
to
running.
music while running?
I don't know. I don't ask
think-
Miss Roberts questions about her personal life very much.
See, my only experience is her listening to worship music. And I feel like it would be hard to run while listening to worship music
This could be worship
exclusively.
music.
So yeah, worship music.
This little light of mine.
Let's end.
Yeah, well, let's end. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.